Hi everyone, my name is Steven, and today I'm going to tell you 5 things that you can do in order to become a better artist. I've been an artist for about a decade now, officially, and I've been making art ever since I was a kid, and I've taught art for 5 years now as well. So I've got a lot of experience under my belt that has led me to a lot of conclusions that I'm going to share with you now. You might get a little bit different opinion from different artists if you talk to them, but this is just my 2 cents. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Item number 1, you have to like it. You have to like art somehow. Sometimes people just have like a passing fancy, they just think it's interesting, but you really have to like art in order to overcome a lot of the challenges that present themselves when you are developing your skill or entering into the environment being a professional artist. Think about the worst thing at your job. Do you really want to learn more about that thing? Or if you're in a school, what about your worst subject? Do you really want to learn more of that particular thing? It's very difficult to move forward, much less overcome hurdles when you come across them. So you have to have a certain amount of passion for it. Now think about your favorite thing, your favorite subject in school, or your favorite thing to do at work, if you have one, of course. And think about how you usually want to expound on that experience. You want to learn more about it. Maybe it's something that you like to do outside of school that you just have this passion for. Maybe it's animation, maybe it's drawing manga, maybe it's drawing a cat, maybe it's doing whatever it is. Everyone has this kind of avenue of passion that they can direct and they can feel towards certain things. Item number 2, you have to practice. You have to practice being an artist. It is an urban legend that being an artist is some sort of magical voodoo thing that people are just innately born with. Can people have a natural propensity towards art? Absolutely, they totally can. I've seen that a lot in my classroom where people with natural abilities can just approach something and draw it, and they've already started off at a high level. But something that I've also seen is that people who are very confident in themselves but are unwilling to go further with that just stay in the same spot. Whereas people who really have a disciplined approach to learning new things, and that brings us to number 3. Number 3 is you have to be willing to learn new things. People who are willing to learn new things will find themselves surpassing in skill those people who maybe have a natural propensity towards art automatically. Think about if you love sports. If you go to a basketball game, like an NBA game, and those players are just dunking left and right and they're making 3-pointers, they didn't get that way because they just sat around eating ding-dongs and ho-hos. No, they took hours and still do take hours and hours of practice. They review their plays, they review what they did wrong, what they did right, and they take the best of those things and practice it over and over again until they are good. And the same thing goes for visual arts. You might have a natural propensity, but you can still build and build upon that thing. So read a lot. I take a lot of inspiration from art history. I also take a lot of inspiration from other artists that I know of in history and also locally, people who I follow on Instagram or through Facebook. Some people might ask, do I have to go to art school in order to learn how to be a good artist? And the simple answer is no, you don't. Part of my own story is I was just a kid who loved to draw, and I looked at the books that I loved to read and the artists on the cover. I tried to imitate what they were doing over and over, and I did improve to a certain point. And it's only after I was in my early 20s that I actually started to pursue art and art classes and ended up going to art school that my skills did multiply by leaps and bounds. There's a huge difference between the previous year when I didn't have any art lessons to the next year where I actually had some formal art training. So you can do it by yourself, but in any case, I would argue that it is always very helpful to learn from someone who is more experienced than you. That leads us to point number 4, which is to learn how to take failure and criticism. In your journey as an artist, you are very likely to come across both of those things. Lots of failures, both in the beginning when you're learning, the willingness to pick yourself up again and push past that barrier, but also perceived failures where you think something's a failure, but really it's going to end up being a success. Usually that happens in the middle of a project when you start thinking like, what are these squiggly lines? They look awful. This doesn't look anything like David Spade's forehead. So you're just sitting there looking at this half-finished thing, thinking about how ugly it's going to be, but you haven't really overcome the hurdle of your current failure. And how can I fix this thing? How can I endure? A lot of art making is about solving problems, figuring out how do I meet this client's need, or how do I approach this specific subject, whatever it is that you're rendering, or whatever kind of philosophy that you're trying to execute. It all comes down to solving a problem, a visual problem. So you're going to come across inevitably failures, and that's okay. Sometimes it takes just taking a break, stepping back, literally sometimes just stepping back from your piece and coming back and with a fresh mind, and try not to get bogged down by your failures, because it's not your failures that define you, it's how you overcome them. I'm sure someone important said that sometime, but it's really true. It really is. As an artist, you have to develop a kind of thick skin where and it's a skill that you're going to have to learn the rest of your life, honestly, whether you're doing it as a hobby or otherwise. There's always going to be someone who walks up and goes, oh, that looks an awful lot like Spider-Man. And you're like, I wasn't trying to make it look like Spider-Man, but okay, I thought it was a cool, unique thing. But whether it be kind of a passing critique like that, or something that you actually post on purpose and get feedback on, comments on, whatever, you have to be willing to kind of glean out valuable comments that people are putting forth. Not just get kind of like an ego boost, because I get that. You post something on Instagram, you get all these little hearts, and you're like, my God, I'm awesome. But it's not actually really helpful. I mean, it's an ego boost, but getting a genuine critique from a professor, a friend, someone who knows a little bit about the art, someone who's a little bit more experienced than you, can be really helpful, because you can say, oh, okay, I didn't see that before. When you're kind of in this little burrito of being turned in on yourself, it can turn out one of two ways, honestly. One way is being a narcissist, because you're like, I got this, I'm awesome. Or it can turn out being really, really depressed, because you're looking at what everybody else is doing and you're saying, well, I suck, so you're defeating yourself before you even start. But if you're willing to listen to other people and learn from other more experienced artists and take what they say and apply it to your own work, you will improve. It's easy to be overwhelmed by a sense of failure when you don't accomplish a goal, or you feel like you're not moving anywhere. Think about what you would do next time. If you have a bad client interaction, it's hard to shrug off. I understand that. I take a lot of those things to heart myself. But what people think of you is not necessarily who you are. If you know who you are, and you know you are a skilled artist, and you tried your best to fulfill whatever it is that you are trying to do, whether it be making a piece of art or a design for somebody, and you just find yourself at a point of failure, the good thing about life is most of the time, the majority of the time, the 99.9% of the time, you will find that if you pick yourself up from that failure and learn from it, you will become stronger, and chances are you will not make the same mistake again, or at least I hope not. That leads me to my last point. Number 5 is try and focus on what you want to do. When I was a kid, I would draw the most random things. Even through high school, I'd draw everything from like people cats to these like firemen blowing up ants and shooting like rabid raccoons out of their butts. And I had no focus whatsoever. And this only got a little bit refined when I went to art school, to where I started focusing more on fantasy and concept art and the fine arts, drawing and painting just a little bit more. But even after college, I found myself kind of snatching up random jobs wherever I could for whatever kind of money I could, and not really having a purpose, especially the purpose that I kind of had in my young mind. I ended up making so much art, that just piles and piles of it, that I never really want to see again for different jobs, because I didn't care about it. Not at all. So whatever it is that you want to do or like to do? What is your goal as an artist? Think about that. And what do you really want to pursue? I remember I was working in this coffee shop. And there's this French Canadian guy that would come down every year, and he just told me once these words that still stick in my mind. It was, Steve, you just focus on what you want to do, and just focus on what you want to do. It's hard. It is. It's hard with life's distractions. You can probably hear my kids screaming in the background here. It's difficult. Life happens, and that's totally understandable, but don't lose focus of what you want to do and what you want to achieve or accomplish out of being an artist. Alright guys, thanks for watching my video. That was 5 things that you ought to know in order to become a better artist, and I really hope to make more of these videos in the future. So if you like and subscribe and leave a comment below, I'd really appreciate it. That's all I have time for today. Thanks for watching.